Welcome in Tuesday weekend recap. Not every week that we've been able to say that here on Section 1904. Do appreciate everybody hanging with us through the weekend. And we are underway. We have some Padres to chat about, a little bit of SDFC. But most importantly, I think it is a wellness check on our man, Juan G. How are you doing? You came down with a case of the Rona. I feel like this is something that I don't know how much this is on people's minds anymore. I know it usually is spiked a little bit around some of the holidays, some of the family get-togethers, things like that. But John, we hope you're doing well. I see that you are in a normal position, so I don't feel like you've been isolated away from the rest of your family. But are things going well? How are you feeling?
You would be wrong. I have been isolated away from the rest of my family. This is the first time since Saturday morning that I've been outside of our guest bedroom. For the sake of this podcast and also my sanity. My wife has gifted me this room, which is our office, our shared office, now my office, until we're not isolating anymore. My wife also tested positive this morning. Oh. So my daughter has not yet. So we're trying to figure out if that means the end of my isolation, if that means we can't send my daughter to school anymore. We're trying to figure out a lot of stuff, but I had a rough 24 to 36 hours where I got hit with every symptom. Since then, the fever has cooled off, and now it just kind of feels like a nasty cold, which, you know, after a couple days, you can live through a nasty cold. And I've been watching a lot of sports, and I've been eager to chat with a person, even if it's digitally. So was very happy to wake up and have a podcast on my schedule for today.
All right, can we go over some of the timing here? And I don't just say this for my own benefit, since I was around you on Wednesday of last week and I was around you on Friday of last week.
Yep.
When did you start feeling shitty, and when did you decide that you were going to take a COVID test?
So I started feeling shitty about 30 minutes after the end of the SDFC game on Saturday. So Saturday late afternoon, early evening. I usually do the what was I doing 3 days ago math on that, and I assume that I got it at the Tottenham Hotspur Europa League victory. Now, you were standing right next to me. We did have a meal afterwards, but you did not jump in the melee that was the celebration and all the snot, drool, spit, and drinks that were flying all around in that mass of people. So I'm assuming I got it there, but yes, you were around me after that, and you were around me on Friday. So I guess be careful. Make sure you're up on all your vitamins, and make sure you have your cough drops nearby. But yeah, if my wife got it, there's a pretty good chance you're going to come down with it too. But fingers crossed, Darren. Fingers crossed.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like since I was in that environment, and you're right, I didn't follow you footstep by footstep into the melee that was going on there on Wednesday afternoon, but I was around you for a while afterwards.
You should have had it by now, right?
I would think so.
Yeah,
I would
probably.
think so, knock on wood. Hopefully that's the case. Then I started thinking, when's the last time I got a booster shot? And I don't remember exactly, but I did get a flu shot and a booster shot sometime around the fall, right? Right at the beginning of flu season. You go into the pharmacy, you say, I'm looking for this. And they say, well, we have this and we can give you that as well. And you go, okay, I'll take this and I'll take that. So, I think I'm pretty up to date on where I am. Plus, I also... and this certainly could come back to haunt me. I do feel like I have a superior immune system. Even though I have had COVID in the past, I do feel like my immune system is superior. I'm going to credit that to genetics and alcohol. So, I feel like I do pretty well in that category, knock on wood. Hopefully this doesn't come back to bite me, because it's a very busy week and I don't have time to get dragged down by COVID-19,
Fair.
John. But you're doing okay? You're feeling okay?
I'm feeling fine. Like I said, I had a rough 24 hours there, and once the fever broke, now I'm mostly bored and annoyed. You'll be very happy to hear that my boredom yesterday, since there was no real sports to watch before 5:30 in the evening, led me to binge almost the entire first season of Andor. So that's a show that we can I can start picking up references to.
I'm kind of jealous. I got to admit, we're through 2 episodes of season 2 of Andor, and I gotta say, some of it, I'm like, wait a minute, what is this in reference to? Almost to the point where I'm this close to recommending that we just rewatch season 1 and then get into season 2. I feel like we're gonna have a leg up.
It's so easy with a show that does like 30, 40-minute episodes. You just fly through it.
You do. It's one of the things I love about the show Hacks, the television show Hacks on HBO or Max or whatever it is. It's one of the things I love about that. You can really, it's not a commitment where you're like, I don't know, kind of tired, bedtime. You can definitely get through an episode as well. When's the last time you got a booster? Just out of curiosity.
No, same as you. I went, it was around the beginning of my daughter's school year. Also to your superior immune system. I had one of those too before I had a child. They're just, they pick up germs and carry them all over the place. But me and my daughter went and got our COVID boosters, I want to say in September, October, November, the fall of some sort. So yeah, I'm attributing that to why this was not that bad, why it was like a day of bad and now it's just kind of meh. My wife did recommend that I go to the doctor so I get Paxlovid, which I'm eligible for because I have asthma. I decided to pass on that because there's always a fear with Paxlovid that it's going to come back later and be much worse, and then you can't do anything about it. So powering through this one, me and my booster from a few months ago.
If it's COVID, Paxlovid.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that the saying? Isn't that the television commercial, or am I just making that up?
No, it is. What a line.
Yeah, if it's COVID, Paxlovid. I feel like between that and Sky Rizzy, I don't know what, I see the Sky Rizzy commercial all the time. I must admit, I have no idea what it actually does or what it treats. I just know that I see it. Is it some sort of skin thing? I'm not sure. Have you had COVID before?
Yeah, I actually.
How did this compare? Out of curiosity.
About the same. Actually, the first time I got it, let's see, did I already have the vaccine? I did. Yeah, I think this is the second time, although I told my wife that I thought maybe I'd gotten it a second time and this might be my third, and she disagrees, and I trust her memory more than mine. So I think this is my second time. It's about the same. Yeah, my wife, by the way, has psoriasis, so Skyrizi is something that's like on her radar.
That's what it is, yeah.
But she is on the Tremfya, which they have commercials for those too, where they declare themselves Tremfyant. The pharmaceutical marketing companies are just working extra hard to try and make these ridiculous names sound normal.
Yeah, Skyrizi. I love that. All right. Well, I am sorry to hear it. It certainly, doesn't make you feel better. Obviously, it makes you feel worse. Yeah. And it just is cramping everybody's lifestyle. But it sounds like you're well on your way, and we wish the best for Rebecca as well. Hopefully, the New York Knicks can make her feel a little bit better later on. Who knows? We'll see. I've had it once that I know of, diagnosed once that I've had COVID. And like you, I think maybe there was another time out there where maybe I had it, but I wasn't too sure and I didn't test and I sort of just powered through. So yeah, even being around you, I figured my wife actually said, she goes, we were having friends over on Sunday and we were grilling, smoked some ribs. And she said, should we tell them that you were around John and John has COVID? I said, no, not really. I don't think that's what we're supposed to do anymore. I think it's more that because if I had some symptoms, if I felt like I was symptomatic, then I would say, hey, listen, just so we're all clear here, I was around somebody who has COVID and I don't feel well. So maybe then you give somebody a heads up. But for the most part, I said, I don't really think that's where we're at with this anymore. I feel like that was what we did maybe in 2020, 2021, just because you wanted to err on the side of caution. But I didn't feel compelled to tell anybody that I had it.
It's interesting you bring that up because so Saturday morning I tested, and there's been a number of times over the last few years I've gotten sick, I've tested, it's negative. And so I test and I'm just expecting it to be negative. And when the positive line shows up, I'm like, oh man, like I have COVID. And this is like a day after I read a story about how there's a new variant and it's running through like China. And this could be a really bad summer for COVID again, all the stuff you were referencing earlier. And I thought to myself, I'm like, well, I'll tell Darren, of course. I'm like, should I tell like Caesar, who we saw on Friday? Should I tell Estella from Mace Nailworks, who we saw on Friday? And then I remembered iPhones had a thing in them where you would just mark like I'm positive for COVID and they would alert all of the people who had been around you over the last few days. Like you've been exposed to someone who is now COVID positive. And I went to find it. It's gone. Apple got rid of it. It's not on the phones anymore. Now, if I went to a doctor and got a positive test from a doctor, not an at-home test, supposedly they could feed into a system that Apple would then notify people, but I'm like, I'm not going to a doctor. Like, I know I'm positive, and there's no treatment for this unless it's Paxlovid, which apparently it is. I'm like, I'm just gonna, but there was no way for me to inform like everyone that I had been around for the last few days. I went to Saturday, so I told you I didn't start feeling symptoms until Saturday afternoon, evening. To full circle on Friday's show, I went to the Stephen Woods work thing, like the group therapy thing. I was there on Saturday with like 25 other people, and I'm like, how do I tell these people that now I have COVID? Like,
Woods announced it on Ben and Woods.
I got up in front of a group of people, asymptomatic, but with COVID, and spoke to them. I'm assuming like my germs were flying all over. I don't know. I felt really bad, and there was really no way for me to let everyone know. But no, I feel like.
Did you call Woods? Did you tell Woods?
No.
I know you posted on Blue Sky. I've seen a couple of posts on Blue Sky where you sort of tossed it out there that I'm reposting this story. Do you want to guess why I'm reposting a story about COVID? Hint, hint. This is John's way of telling everybody that he's been in contact with that, just something to be aware of, something you might want to know here on Blue Sky. If you can figure out how to work this fucking app, since this one doesn't work any better than the other one.
I definitely wrote up a text to Woods and did not press send on it because I was like, I don't want to, especially because it was his first one. And like, you could tell even he was kind of nervous about, I didn't want to be the guy who ruined it either. The emotional part of COVID might be the worst part for me right now.
Well, I'm supposed to go out there and interview players, SDFC players here in a little bit. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I should wear a mask, you know, because
do you still have a mask?
Somewhere, it's funny. I was cleaning out my car recently, and I came across like the very first mask that I had back in 2020.
Was it a gator?
It was not a gator. I do have a couple of gators though, and it was actually in a San Diego Loyal mask. And I had it, and I was like, what do I do with this? What do I do with this? And I was a bit conflicted. I was at a car wash. I was like, well, I'm just trying to clean the car out here. And I thought to myself, well, what should I do with this mask? And for a second, I had a feeling of sentimentality where I was like, man, this is like my first ever mask. And I was like, what are you doing? Throw it out. What are you going to keep this thing for? What are you out of your mind? You're going to keep a mask that you've been breathing in. It's filthy. It's dirty. It's been sitting in your car. You didn't even know it was here. You stumbled across it. What are you, a hoarder? You're just going to keep things just for the sake of keeping them? Throw the thing in the trash. What are you, moron?
It did say Loyal on it, though.
Yeah, whatever. I got other Loyal stuff that I can use as keepsakes. I don't need a mask. I mean, that sort of stuff. I mean, those are the days. I don't even know that we ever talked about this, that I ever talked about this publicly. But, they had a partnership with Rady Children's Hospital where since we were playing games behind closed doors, Jordan and I used to have to go get tested every week at Rady Children's Hospital. So we used to do the drive-in test where I would drive in. I had a Jeep, roof off, and we would drive in and the doctor would be out there in the full hazmat suit and he would take the Q-tip, scrape it up your nose a couple of times, put it back into the thing. And then you'd find out if you were clear to do the game. That's literally what we had to do before every game that we played. Jordan and I would have to drive to Rady Children's Hospital and get tested each and every week. But yeah, I saw that and I was like, what do I do with this? I was like, what are you going to do? Are you going to put it in a museum? Like, what are you going to do with this mask? Throw it out, get rid of it. So we ended up doing that as well. But I don't know, John, I'm just going to say this has been a very, very exciting season for San Diego Football Club. And if this season somehow goes south, because I'm out there interviewing Anders Dreyer in a little bit, and this has some sort of negative impact on the team. I hope you can live with yourself. I hope you'll be able to live with the guilt and shame associated with getting an entire team infected with COVID, if that's the case.
Here's how I pass the buck. Darren, to save me the guilt and shame, please don't go to San Diego FC training today. Just call in, see if you can get the guys on the phone.
I got to do what I got to do. It's a short week here. We got another one of these short weeks where it's 3 games in 8 days. They played an exciting game against Galaxy. We play again tomorrow night against Seattle, at Seattle.
Fuck.
So timing is really, really tight. And then again back home against Austin. So, yeah, it's another one of those real short weeks here. Three matches, 8 games, everything going well. And, only one thing could really derail this whole operation right now.
Me.
And his name is Juan Gennaro.
Hey, wait, can I just to put a finer point on how good things are and how I'm going to tear it all down with my COVID? Just a random thing, because this doesn't seem like this ever happens, and it also adds a good bit of perspective. Do you know where the Padres are in the NL West right now?
They're second at 30-22, and full disclosure, I look it up. I look it up about once a week. I look it up for the first show of the week, just so I have it as a reference point for the rest of the week.
And San Diego FC is where in the Western Conference?
They're second in the Western Conference standings.
And where is San Diego Wave in the NWSL standings?
Wave had a big win. Wave, I want to say, are they second? They're second in the Western Conference.
They're all second. All second. Every San Diego team we're paying attention to right now is maybe not the best team, but a really good team fighting for either the top of their conference, the top of their league, or the top of their division. And that's, so as you pointed out, sometimes you go on social media and it just seems very doom and gloom from the fans, but it's like, I don't know, man, take a step back. Things are pretty good for all three teams right now.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I was thinking about it with the Padres. I understand that, they've been in an offensive funk. I understand that Fernando Tatis Jr. has been bad for the last couple of weeks. I understand that they literally do not have a left fielder. Okay, like, it's kind of a hard thing to do, to not have a left fielder. You only have so many positions, and you don't have one of them.
We're gonna come back to that.
It's a big deal. And I know Michael King is hurt, and I know that there's a way of looking at it and saying this glass is half empty. I will not rat this person out, John, but I did get a text from a very prominent member of the local media. I don't remember exactly where we were on the weekend. Maybe it was, maybe it was Sunday. I think they were trailing the Atlanta Braves on Sunday 3-1. They were down 3-1 to the Braves. Michael King headed off to the injured list because
it didn't look good.
Slept wrong on his shoulder. And I got a text message from a very prominent member of the local media. You can all try to guess who it is, and I'm never going to tell you. And all it said was, this team is cooked. And I was like, okay. And then Sheets, 2-run jack. They end up winning the game. They take the series. They come back home. They're trailing against the Marlins. They figure out a way to take it to extras. Extras haven't been successful. They walk it off in classic, like, mid-2010s Padres fashion, a walk-off wild pitch, which, is the kind of thing.
For a pinch runner.
Oh, it was amazing. That was some Padre baseball right there with the trademark on it.
Yeah.
And, I don't, are they cooked? I don't know that I see it that way. And for as much as I think we can point out fairly that they don't have a left fielder and the pitching is I don't know. It's kind of a little bit of a crisis here. And Fernando Tatis Jr., his body language, again, John, his body language has become a topic of much conversation amongst Padre fans. But, are we not balancing this out with enough chatter about how good Nick Pivetta has been? That start on Friday night. I mean, I'm telling you, I jotted it down. Not that I was keeping a bunch of notes over the weekend, but I wanted to make sure that I remembered it for when we got back on the air on Tuesday. That start from Pivetta on Friday night and that moment of Sheets homering off Chris Sale. There was a time earlier this year, not that long ago, where Sheets was not getting at bats against lefties, and he homered against one of the toughest lefties in Major League Baseball. So, I'm not here to say everything is great. I'm not here to say that, AJ deserves a lifetime extension. I'm not here to say that roster construction has been ideal. But I think every team in Major League Baseball has some flaws, including the Padres. And I do think that there are some things that are worthy of saying, these are things that are keeping this squad afloat. This team right now is 30-22. This is why I know what the record is. Because I just wanted to look back and see what it was a year ago through 52 games, which is meaningless. But this team a year ago, granted, meaningless as it is, was 26-26. So,
that's not meaningless. That's
important. I just was to satisfy my own curiosity. I don't really have a point. My point is, though, that it was 26-26 through 52 last year, which is just a random number. There's 110 left to go here. And it's 30-22 this year. And, they've had, maybe some of this is like Matt Waldron-esque, where, Matt Waldron was a guy who didn't factor in at the end of the season because by that time it just, it wasn't happening.
Yeah.
But you can't tell the story of the season without Matt Waldron. And maybe those are the kind of, that's kind of some of the stuff that we're seeing here now. Like you're just figuring out ways to keep it moving in the right direction. I think even after a 6-game losing streak, having won 3 out of the last 4, I want to say, including a series in Atlanta, which, based on the first inning of that first game, you wouldn't have bet a lot of money on the Padres. I wouldn't have either, but they figured out a way to win 2 out of 3, and I think there is something to be said for that that's good.
Yeah, that's the point that I wanted to make. Is I was actually thinking about this morning as well, and I was like, man, if there was an absolute low point, a rock bottom where it's like, oh God, the wheels are just falling off, it was after the first pitch of the Braves series. The first pitch Nick Pivetta threw, Ronald Acuna Jr. homered, and you're just like, well, we're screwed. They've lost 6 in a row. Acuna's back. Pivetta can't get people out. This is going to go terribly. And they win that game. And it was a hard-fought game. And they win that game. And it's like, okay, cool. And then King wakes up, shoulder, sleeps bad on his shoulder. He's got a knot in his shoulder, whatever the shoulder thing is. I'm sure he's, just out for the year. We just don't know it yet. And they try to throw together a bullpen game, and it doesn't work. And it's like, oh no. And now they won back-to-back games on Sunday in Atlanta and then Monday in San Diego. And like, I know the announcers work for the team, but like, there was so much commentary during that game on TV and radio about the travel day the Padres had and how it was such a much easier travel to San Diego for the Miami Marlins than it was for the San Diego Padres. Sure, factor that in as well. The Padres have now won 3 of 4. Yes, there's concerns, Darvish, King, Tatis, left field, all of that stuff. But yeah, I just wanted that perspective of like, they're in second place. They're 2 games behind the Dodgers. I remember going into this season, the conversation was, it's not just the Dodgers you have to worry about. Watch out for the fucking Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks are in 4th place, 6 games out of first. And I'm not saying they're going to stay there. They're 27-27. You said the Padres at this point last year were 26-26. Like, the Diamondbacks could easily go on a run and end up 2nd or 1st in the division because it's a long season. But despite losing 6 in a row, and despite the offense still kind of being garbage, like,
it is kind of garbage.
They're winning games. They're winning games. Grit squad, Darren. Grit squad.
I'm reluctant to go down that pathway, John, but I feel like that's kind of appropriate. When you see Tyler Wade taking off from third base and scoring on a wild pitch, I think the proper term is to just say grit squad. Grit squad. Shilty. You get to say grit squad game all over again. But Manny homers, and Manny's, we talked about it last week. Why does Manny only have 3 homers? Well, he's had 3 since the last conversation we had about it. So, and like, was there real concern? I don't think so. I think the one thing that's always true is there's a lot more fragility on the outside than there seems to be on the inside at times. At times. Now, sometimes that fragility does exist and things can crater pretty quickly. But, this is a squad I don't think that's as fragile as some of the people who follow the team and some of the people who cover the team. And, I guess it's just, I know Schultz objected to the term roller coaster, but it's funny because I was on Ben and Woods last week and I heard AJ Preller go on and he said, this is part of the roller coaster. And I was like, I hope this gets back to Mike Schultz, since Mike Schultz hates the term roller coaster and started berating whichever member of the local media it was last year who dared use the word roller coaster in a post-game press conference. But it is part of it. And when there's 110 to go, anything can happen. Anything can happen. So, for where they are now, which is really all we have, I don't have any predictions for what's going to happen here over the next couple of months. None at all. Oh, Kevin Acey's reporting that they're finally interested in looking at a left fielder. Great. I mean, who's available? I have no idea. I've seen some names tossed out there on Twitter. These names don't mean anything to me. I don't even know what the Padres have to trade at this point.
I saw two articles this morning while I was doing research for Front Row Seat that the entire basis of the article is the Padres should trade for this left fielder. And they were not written by Padres people. Like, one of them was, I think I included it, it was a Reds site, and they were like, hey, the Padres should trade for Austin Hayes. He's been playing really good, and he's really cheap right now. And I'm like, all right, yard sale, I guess. The other one was for a website called like Motorcycle Sports, so I didn't trust it, so I didn't include it. But they were basically arguing that Miguel Andujar would be the perfect left fielder for the Padres. Apparently, he's like lost his spot with the A's or wherever he's at because some young kid has taken it. And they're like, yeah, just Padres need someone, and we don't need this guy, so let's see what we can get for him. Yeah, that's going to be the fun thing for the next, I don't know, month. I'm imagining it's not going to drag out for the next month, which is, can the Padres find themselves a left fielder?
Yeah, I mean, and Sheets was out there again, and
He was okay.
again, 0 for 5. I don't. It's not ideal, but I don't know that I object to it. Interesting, also, and I thought about our friend Dylan from Letters to AJ, that it was the first time that we saw Tatis Merrill Machado 1, 2, 3. Luis Arraez was given the day off, had a bad weekend. Had a bunch of punch-outs swinging, I think. I don't remember the exact numbers, but he was given a rare day off against the former team, by the way, which certainly stood out to me. But was given a day off, so it was an opportunity to put Tatis, Merrill, Machado 1, 2, 3. Now, Tatis didn't do anything. Merrill went 1 for 5, and Machado homered in the, 8th inning, 7th, 8th inning, to tie the game at 3-3. So, it was his only hit of the game, but it was a big one. It was a big one, and it is why you pay him. So I just am kind of curious to see what the lineup's going to look like a little later on. Is it an opportunity to move Tatis? I'm not sure. Since his last multi-hit game, John, this is the research that you just come to expect from Section 1904. Since his last multi-hit game, which was the 21-0 game against the Colorado Rockies, it's been 14 games. Slash line is terrible. 16 Ks and 6 at-bats and like 3 walks. 158, 213, 351. He's hit a couple of home runs, but they've been solo shots, I think. So, nothing really going on there. I did not watch on Saturday, but I did see a little bit of social media reaction that he was a bit pouty looking. He's an easy guy to get into the body language conversation with because we know what it looks like when things are going well with Tatis. He's dancing, he's smiling, everything looks great. And it's really, really easy to get into a body language conversation with Tatis because when it's not that, it's the opposite of that. And it's easy for people to say, oh, he's pouting. Look at his body language. He's sitting by himself on the bench. Again, I didn't see this. I was wrapped up over the weekend. I watched a little bit of Friday, Saturday, totally out of pocket because I had SDFC. Sunday, entertaining, and then a little bit on Monday. But I don't know if this has stood out to you. I think it always is going to stand out because we know what he looks like when things are going well. And when it doesn't look like that, it is noticeable. I don't know that I'm ready to fully commit, though, that he's being pouty and sulky and all that sort of stuff just because he's not finding success. To me, it's much more just the performance than it is, whatever else people want to read into how it looks when the camera pans to him and he's sitting by himself in the dugout.
Yeah, I mean, look, if he was dancing, they'd be like, man, he really doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care that he's not hitting right now. Look at him. He's still happy, having a grand old time. He wants at the end of the day, Fernando Tatis, I know these are old man stats, but I'm going to throw them at you anyway. He's batting .275 with 12 home runs and 27 RBIs. That's fine. That's kind of what you would expect Tatis to have at this point in the season. He was just so amazing to start the year, and he's been so bad lately that, again, it's the roller coaster. You're on the downward slope going when does this go back up again? And with Machado, we've seen it time and time again, and Machado's such a steady guy that it's really easy to be like, oh, he'll do it. Just give him time. He always does this. But with Tatis, it's well, how's he going to get out of it if he's so mopey? And it's I don't know, man. He's 25. He's been doing this since he was 10. I'm sure he's had slumps before. I'm sure he's had slumps worse than this in majors, in the minors, in whatever he did before that at amateur ball. So I'm sure he'll be fine. But yeah, he's a guy who is not happy when he's not performing. which is probably a sign that he's a perfectionist, which is probably something he should talk about with a therapist, but it's not something that's going to make him a worse or a different baseball player. It's just a part of Fernando Tatis Jr. It's part of it. It's fine.
Kevin Acey wrote today in the Padres Daily, Fernando Tatis Jr. is in a slump, unlike almost anything he has endured in his career, batting 181 over the past 20 games. Now, Kevin goes back 20. I went back 14 or whatever.
Yeah.
Batting 181 over the last 20. Only a stretch in the summer of 2023 when he hit 180 over 27 games could be considered worse. And you got to like, I don't know, like, could that be considered worse? Are we just saying like his batting average is why we're considering this worse? Or like how many home runs did he hit? I don't know. I guess everybody just draws their own conclusion. What I wonder though is, is it an opportunity to say, for Mike Shildt to justifiably get up there today with a different looking lineup and be like, yeah, we just want to give him a little bit of a different look. I mean, is it an opportunity to get him out of the leadoff spot? I don't know. I don't know that it is. I don't know that they would do that. I don't know if there's some fear that might backfire. I'm not so sure. But I hear managers all the time be like, yeah, we just want to give somebody a different look. Maybe watching Luis Ariz, who I know didn't have a good weekend and was given a day off for a reason, but maybe giving Fernando well, you can't even do that. You don't have enough outfielders. But
yeah.
you don't, like, you literally can't give him a day off. There's just not enough outfielders to go around. Bad enough you don't have a left fielder. Now you don't have a right fielder. So, what the fuck? So, I guess you can't do that. But you can be like, hey, you know what we want him to do? We want him to be in the on deck circle and watch Luis Ariz, a 3-time batting champ. We want to watch him. And then all of a sudden, if you have a little bit of success, you're like, well, not going to mess with that. So, I don't know.
Wait, I do have a question for you, though, because we're not experts. We're just a couple guys who watch a lot of baseball. If Mike Shildt, for whatever reason, calls you up today and he goes, what do you think I should do with the lineup for the next week? It's obviously not working. The offense is struggling. What would you have me do? Not that you're an expert, not that you even need to explain your rationale behind it, but if you were the manager, if the manager gave you the keys to draw up the Padres lineup for the next, let's call it 4 or 5 games, what changes are you making, if any? Because I know what change I want to make.
Well, I really like the idea that Dylan tossed out there last week. I really like the idea of Tatis, Merrill, Machado. But, I also think it's fair to point out that Merrill's homered once since he's returned from the injured list. So, is he your best hitter? I might go back to Ariz, Tatis, Manny. I don't mind going righty.
Okay.
I might. Now, if you're asking me 1 through 9, I don't know that I'm necessarily prepared for that. But obviously, I want Sheets in there every day. But I might take this opportunity to give people a little bit of a different look. If Ariz is given a day off because he's done things that he hasn't done in a long time, like punch out 3 times in a game. I think it was 3 times swinging. So if that's maybe just one little spot in the lineup is worth consideration for me. Again, I also think this is like an incredibly overrated conversation.
No, it is. Totally.
I just think, again, as I said, as was said to me, and as I often repeat, you just get your best hitters and you put them you get them as many at bats as possible.
Ariz is having a hard time not swinging at pitches outside the strike zone, which is a little worrisome. I found it a little kind of like a wink and a nod that with Ariz out, they moved Jake Cronenworth over to first and went like, actually, we do have another first baseman. If you don't want to be good here, we can replace you. Like, we have other options, not to mention Gavin Sheets and whatever. What I would do personally, and I'll explain why I don't think Mike Shildt can do this, is I would go Tatis, Merrill, Machado. And that would be my 1 through 3 every game for the next 5 years. And my rationale behind it is those are my 3 best hitters, and I want those 3 hitters to get the most plate appearances. That's going to be the best thing for our offense. Tatis is going to get more strikes if he has a hitter like Merrill behind him. Merrill is going to get more strikes if he has a hitter like Machado behind him. And then you can either put Ariz 4th, which I don't know if he'd be into, or you could put him like 8th or 9th and have him try and lead off a rally where he can get on base and Tatis and Merrill and Machado can try and hit him home. But as we talked about at the beginning of the season, it sounded like Ariz was not thrilled with coming out of the number 1 spot. I imagine the further down in the lineup he goes, the more annoyed he gets. But that's kind of why I led off with the Cronenworth thing of like, do you think there's a chance that Arise gets moved at some point before the trade deadline? Do you think they would move Arise for like a left fielder?
Could be. I mean, it's hard to say. Like, what value does Luis Arise have?
I don't know.
With a half a season left before he hits free agency.
Very little.
Right? And he's a pretty polarizing player when it comes to his value anyway.
Yeah.
So, I don't know
liked.
what it is that you think you can get. Why would somebody want a half a season of Luis Arise and trade away a left fielder? No idea. And I'm not saying nobody would do that. I'm just saying I don't understand why somebody would do that without knowing the context of why a team would do that.
I agree.
So, that to me is that a contending team? Is that a team that thinks, well, we're just a Luis Arise away and we have an extra left fielder, so maybe this makes sense for both of us? I don't know that scenario exists myself.
But that's why I think they're screwed. That's why I think they're stuck with Arise either batting first or second, because otherwise you're going to piss off him, you're going to piss off his agent, and every. So, yeah, I mean, maybe you just flip him and Tatis. It would make him happier. Maybe Tatis is better with Machado hitting behind him. I don't know. But
and this isn't really a time where Tatis can stand to object because you know what? Like, you're not been great. And I think the other thing, too, that's important, and I do believe this, and you just mentioned it, this is also a long baseball season. This is why you don't keep stats based on 2 weeks or a month. There's a reason why the statistics are based on a season, because that's 500, 600 at-bats in a season. It's not 100 at-bats in a season, whether you're performing or whether you're not performing. That's not the way the sport is. That's not the bookkeeping of the sport. Now, of course, you can go and you can find splits and you can find weeks and you can do all sorts of stuff now with the internet. So you can do all sorts of stuff on baseballreference.com. You could literally click on game logs and find out what a guy's batting average is between these 3 games or these 10 games or these 2 weeks or whatever, which is how a lot of people do this sort of stuff just for the purposes of having conversations like this. But at the end of the day, you keep stats based on a season for a reason, because that's what matters most. You're not a batting champ because you had one good month. So a good month affords you the opportunity to have a bad month or an average month or whatever the case is. Like these guys, who put up numbers. Very rarely everybody strives for consistency. I always remember like Phil Nevin telling me, if you're an RBI guy, you want to have 20 RBIs per month. That's your goal. 20 RBIs per month. That's the goal of a guy who drives runs in. And I always thought that was interesting, that you do try to keep month by month some sort of level of consistency. But, 1 month you're going to have 30 and 1 month you're going to have 10. You know what I mean? Like if that's who you are at the end of a season, then it's probably not going to be evenly, conveniently sliced month by month where everything is equal across the board, unless your name is Tony Gwynn. And, nobody's Tony Gwynn. So, most of this stuff will have some peaks. And most of these players will have some valleys. And I tend to believe that's just kind of where we are with some of these guys at any given point in the season. So, it is what you do at the end of 500, 600 at-bats that is the thing that we often measure and evaluate these guys on. That's why, okay, fine, a player of the week, a player of the month, great. But, you win awards based on what it is that you do at the end of a season, not at the end of a week, not at the end of a road trip, not at the end of 20 games like Kevin Acee pointed out today. Or not at the end of 14 games like I pointed out today. That's just a way to do it to carry on a conversation. But that's not really the way we evaluate these things. But, if you feel like, hey, I got to get a guy a different look, this is an opportunity to do that. And maybe this is. I don't know. I wouldn't mind it, though.
I'm also laughing because I just saw in my email inbox like 20 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago, there was a new article from our buddy Dylan at Letters to AJ titled Representative Sample. And when I scanned it, it seemed to imply that there is now enough of a representative sample to make some declarations on this Padres season, which is funny because it both agrees and disagrees with what you're saying there.
I mean, again, I think 100 at-bats is something I've always heard, that like 100 at-bats into a season is enough of a sample size that you can't say this is guaranteed to be what it is for the rest of the year. It's not indicative of the next 400, but it's enough that you can say, I can make decisions based on this. This isn't a slump. This isn't a hot streak. 100 at-bats or so into a season is about like, I feel like I have a sense of what it is, who it is. And that's also what the first couple of months of the baseball season are, which is why we talked about this like weeks back. What is the team going to be willing to do to let AJ add to this? That's another big question too. What will ownership allow this team to do to address its needs? Now, we don't even know what the needs are currently because I don't know about you. The Michael King stuff worries me.
It's very worrisome.
It really worries me.
It's as worrisome as the Darvish stuff. Like, it's equally worrisome.
Yeah. I mean, it went from sleeping wrong on it to, hey, go on the IL. I'm sorry. I think if you just slept on it wrong, and we've all had a day where we've woken up, you're like, my neck hurts. But, especially those of us that are getting older. But, for an athlete in his prime to go on the injured list as a result, to me is that raises some eyebrows. That is a little bit alarming. And then you factor in some of the other variables about him being a free agent. I know it's easy for everyone to be like, well, send him to an arm MRI. Get him an MRI. Why can't you get some imaging done? I don't know. Maybe Michael King doesn't want to have imaging done. Or maybe if he does want to have imaging done, he wants to do it away from the team so that he knows what he's dealing with first. It's often part of this conversation, especially for a guy that's sitting where Michael King is sitting, knowing that free agency is just a couple of months away. Guys don't always want to know what it is that's happening in their elbows and shoulders. They don't want to know that sort of stuff. And they certainly don't want the teams to know that sort of stuff as well.
Right.
Because, that stuff often does get used against teams. Now, he's in a different position as an upcoming free agent. But, guys don't want to have their teams know that they got a little bit of fraying here. Most pitchers have fraying in their elbow. Most pitchers do have some fraying in their elbows or shoulders. These guys, it's a very unnatural thing that they do.
Yeah.
So, that's
Did you
just
see
one
the Schilt
that
quote?
if I were him, I'd want to go somewhere else and see what it is first and make my own decision before I allow the team to go poking around in there.
Did you see the Schilt quote on King?
I don't know that I did. Which one was it?
He was asked about King, and he said, yeah, he's got a knot in his shoulder. I think this was yesterday, and he said, the good news is it hasn't gotten any worse since yesterday. Like, that was the good news. Not that it's getting better. The good news was it hasn't gotten any worse since yesterday. And I believe that was a quote on Monday, and he was pulled. He was scratched from his start on Saturday, which to me says that Saturday he woke up with shoulder pain, and maybe Sunday it even got worse. And then Monday it didn't get any worse than it was on Sunday. All of that was just like little eyebrow raising of like, wait, this went from he slept on it wrong to it got progressively worse over a couple days. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't expect anything from Mike Schilt in this conversation at all. Usually Schilt is one of these guys who's always like, I don't know, man, that's a question for the doctors. And you're like, oh, okay, great. Well, where's the doctor? Can you trot the doctor out here so we can interview him, please? It's like, oh yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where he is. Well, who's the doctor anyway? Yeah. So, you know what I mean? I don't ever rely on these guys to give us any information. But, I would just say, again, it's Padre baseball. You hope for the best and prepare for the worst. And I have no insight on this whatsoever. I haven't spoken to anybody about it. I just know what I've read, which is as much as anybody else. And I know a little bit about the history. And we also can just remind everybody of some of the variables, some of the things that are unique to Michael King in the situation, which, like I said, I know everybody's like, oh, you got him, you force him to have an MRI. Like, I don't think you can do that.
No, you can't.
I don't think that's really, I don't think it's legal.
No.
So, yeah, I'm not so sure that we're not going to operate at Michael King's pace on this one. And I'm sorry, everybody loves Michael King, but Michael King also needs to be thinking about himself.
Yep.
He's a free agent here. This is his opportunity to cash in on everything that he's done. So, that's just, he's not been paid. So, I don't know that he's going to go out there like Joe Musgrove and go put himself in a situation in the postseason where he's literally willing to blow his arm out to go and help the team try to win a World Series. I'm not saying he won't. I'm just saying I don't think it should be expected of him given his circumstances.
He'd be potentially giving up many millions of dollars to do that, which is not a thing that Joe Musgrove was doing. Right.
Musgrove got paid, which is why, that's the sort of thing that you would think there. So anyhow, I feel like the Marlins over the next couple of days, it's okay. It's okay. Anyhow, we'll see. I look forward to the lineup a little bit. Because I'm on a little bit of a time crunch, I thought really the most entertaining game for me of this club's early history came on Saturday afternoon. San Diego Football Club taking care of LA Galaxy 2-1. I am so glad that we have figured out a way to get Adrian Garcia Marquez's radio calls turned around quickly and available for social media, because it has brought me great delight, John, and what I can only describe as perhaps my finest moment of broadcasting ever, where I literally said nothing during this entire call, where Chucky Lozano scores in the 95th minute and SDFC beats LA Galaxy in the return match. It was a great game. I thought it was just a brilliant game played. The energy, the atmosphere, we could talk about the nonsense after the game, but it was just a brilliant game to be on the broadcast for, and to have it won at the death by Lozano on a great, great cross, a brilliant assist from Anders Dreyer. What a Saturday afternoon at Snapdragon Stadium. It was phenomenal, and I'm so happy that Adrian gets that call, and he gets it retweeted or reposted by Chucky and by Yeppe and by the club. I'm really glad that Adrian's call is out there. And again, my finest moment of broadcasting perhaps ever, because I said nothing. I just laid out and let the moment breathe.
I mean, there's something to be said for laying out. It's not a talent that you have. It's one that you earn through time spent on the call. So good job by you, and great job by Adrian. I'd be very curious to know if anyone else does that thing Adrian does, where he like calls the goal really fast and then takes in his deep breath and yells goal. Like, cause it just, as fast as the ball gets in the net, he's and go. And then it's like, it's a big breath in and then go. Great call by Adrian. Great header by Chucky. Great pass by Dreyer. Ugh. I am going to ask you though. I watched a fair amount of this game, if not all of this game. I think I missed some of the second half. Did you think this was a great game for San Diego FC? Because I know the Galaxy are defending champs. I know they're getting better. But they're all the way at the bottom of the table. Mm-hmm. They're the worst team in MLS this year. I know I said this last week. I thought that they should leave this game with 3 points, and they left the game with 3 points. But LA scored first, and SDFC needed a giant mistake on the part of the Galaxy in the 95th minute to score the game-winning goal. This was not a 4-1 SDFC was dominant and awesome. And they once again, they controlled possession, like 60-40. They had more shots on goal. They had more shot attempts. They had less fouls. They had less yellows. They had more corners, all that stuff. But did you think this was a great game? Because I'm not sure I came away from it going like, what a great game. It was an exciting ending. It's a very exciting ending. But through a lot of this game, I was frustrated that SDFC was not able to do more.
I thought it was really, it's a rematch game. And, when you look up and down at Galaxy, it's easy to say, well, this team has 10 losses, now 11 for a reason, right? They must stink, and they had to trade away some of their better players, and they had to get rid of this guy because he cost too much money, so now this guy's playing for Kansas City, and then they had to trade this guy to LAFC, and gosh, what's going on with this league and the salary cap and all that sort of stuff. But when you do look down, you do look and you see that is Marco Reus, who is playing. He's a legend who's playing in the midfield, who's now really having his best stretch ever in Major League Soccer. He arrived last summer. He didn't do much at all. Marco Reus is a 3-time Bundesliga Player of the Year, 2-time German Footballer of the Year. He's a great player. He's 35 and he's on achy knees, but he's playing his third consecutive 90-minute match, and he played really, really well, I thought, in the midfield. It's the first time that they've had Marco Reus and Gabriel Peck and Joseph Paintsville. Those are 2 of their 3 designated players. This is only the second time that they've had all of those 3 players starting in a game. The first time they completely battered Sporting KC, but they didn't win. They put up a bunch of really good statistics that completely battered them in the game, but they ended up losing because there's always one mistake that this team will make. I talked to Joe Totino, who's been the voice of the Galaxy for a long time. He's like, our problem is we play pretty well and we're coming into our own and things are starting to get figured out, but we always make a mistake. There's always one howler per game, and usually that's the howler that costs us. And that's what happened with Soria at the end of it, where he completely shanks it. Now, what I will say is, SDFC took advantage of a mistake, and I think putting yourself in a position to take advantage of mistakes, especially in the sport of soccer, is a skill, and it is a mindset, and it is something that comes with coaching. that you are in a position to pounce. You can't predict that Cerrillo's going to shank it the way he did, but you can predict that Galaxy is good for 1 or 2 howlers a game, and you have to capitalize on that in a low-scoring sport. And I also would say I don't know how good of a coach Greg Vanney is. He's the head coach of Galaxy, but I do know during the week, he did say, I didn't really know what to expect from this team week number 1. Now we've got tape on them. And so they worked on some of the things that they thought would be some of the weaknesses for San Diego Football Club. And they capitalized. They got a great goal. I thought all 3 goals were class. I thought the first goal by Fagundes was like really,
it was
I don't
really
know
good.
in television what it looked like, but in person, that guy's got to make a difficult shot. That guy, has got 76 goals, I think it is, and 76 assists in Major League Soccer. That's a lot. That's second all time. He's a really, really good player. Gabriel Peck.
Paintsel was terrifying, by the way. Every time he touched the ball, I thought he was going to score.
So much pace. And, there was a couple plays here where I thought, the defenders. See, I think it was a great game. Maybe not so much in they ran him off the pitch and it, should have been 3-0 or whatever, 4-1, whatever the final could have been. But, I just thought that there were so many little things that happened in the game. There were so many moments where McNair and McVeigh did things defensively where they tracked down Paintsel, where, you're chasing somebody like Joe Paintsel who's running towards the SDFC goal, and those guys track them down. I thought Lozano was going to be remembered. His moment of glory was the goal, obviously, but he did so many things in this game to track back. He had a tackle on Gabriel Peck late. That's the 2024 Newcomer of the Year. Gabriel Peck. This is a guy who's being scouted by Arsenal and Atletico Madrid and Liverpool. He is a talent. Now, he hasn't had a good year, but he is a talent, and he's been noticed by some of the bigger European clubs. And for Chucky to go and track that guy all the way 70 yards down the field, take the ball from him, and take possession away from him. Chucky also got challenged by Diego Fagundes. He stood up, and they went nose to nose. It was a great moment, and I don't know what the camera caught, but I saw Anibal Godoy pumping his fist. He's like, yeah, fuck yeah, Chucky. They were so inspired by the stuff that Chucky was doing defensively that it was just that he got rewarded by the goal. People will always remember the goal.
Yeah.
And they should. It was a great moment in the 95th minute. It was an unbelievable moment to sweep the Galaxy. But there were so many other things that these guys did during the game. Not to sound like soccer snob guy, but there were so many other things that happened in this game that I thought were just if you're Mike Ivaras and you can't wait to show the tape to your team because you're not talking about a missed opportunity here or there. You're talking about look at what we did to stay here, to stay level. Look at what we did in this situation. Look at what this guy did there. Look at what McVeigh did. Look at what McNair did. They had a 2-on-1 break late in this game and Patty McNair completely broke up a 2-on-1 just by figuring out, was it going to be Paintsel? Was it going to be, where was it going to be? Did just enough that he gave his team an opportunity to stay in this game and not fall behind. Chucky did a ton of the dirty work as well. Yepe continues to play like he's the best midfielder in Major League Soccer. His pass to Luca De La Torre, it was so great. That whole play was set up by Yepe, where he passes it right to Willie Camado, and Camado gets it back to Yepe, who continues his run, and then he slips it in there. Beautiful, beautiful weighted pass right into Luca De La Torre, who I guess got married last week. I mean, what is with this guy? Nobody ever knows what's going on with Luca De La Torre.
Man.
I know. And, he scores, and he was pretty active. So I did. I really, really enjoyed the game. I thought there was so much more to the game than just the 3 goals or the handful of saves. There was just a lot going into it, and Galaxy really, really wanted that. Galaxy really had that one circled because they thought, hey, listen, our spiral started by losing to these guys when we didn't know anything about them. Now we know what they're all about. Now they're not going to take us by surprise. And our turnaround, now that we're playing better and we've got all our players back and everybody's healthy, our turnaround is going to start now. And, that was never going to be an easy one for SDFC. And, the field was phenomenal. Obviously the crappy thing is what takes away from the brilliance of the game, at least in my opinion, is all the nonsense and coverage of the stuff that happened afterwards, where you get a couple of dozen drunken idiots who were wildly swinging at each other up there on the upper deck. I hate that takes away, and that should be that's as much a talking point as anything. It took away from what should have been just nothing but a celebratory atmosphere on a really, really game well played. Players are getting called up. Luca has been called up by the U.S. men's national team. Paddy McNair has been called up by Northern Ireland. By the way, Anders Dreyer got called up by Denmark. Denmark's playing Northern Ireland. So, that's going to be something worth paying attention to. And Chucky did get the call up too with the Mexican national team. So,
yeah.
To see 4 players called up to international duty always makes you a little bit nervous. But, it also is a testament to how well these guys have been playing in this structure, that you have 4 players. And I heard maybe there's a 5th. We'll see. But, maybe there's a 5th one that will be announced here over the next couple of days. Not so sure. But, I did. I just thought it was a great game. I thought it had some really, really, some great stuff to talk about, like tactically during the match. And, there was narrative behind it. And, of course, it just had the most dramatic ending of any of the games that we've seen so far this year. I did. I mean, they probably played better against Dallas. But, Dallas just sort of came in here. It's like, whatever. Okay, we're going to lose this one 5-0. Galaxy, really, they still are champions. And, they still have really, really good players. They're not as good as they were last year. But they started playing better, and they got performances from the guys that they kind of... Peck was, I thought, bad. I thought he was pretty bad. But, Royce and Paintsel and Fagundes, some of these guys played really, really well, and, they made it difficult. And it was, it's just a great thing to watch SDSC solve this on Saturday afternoon for me.
Yeah, I wrote something on Section 1904, kind of a game recap. And in the game recap, I hinted that if SDFC doesn't win this game in the final minute, I don't think there's any fights in the stands. I think it was just the outcome of the game dramatically changes in the last minute, and then boom, the game's over, security's gone, and it's like everyone with their emotions either running high or running low. They're frustrated, they're happy, whatever, all released upon each other, and they're drunk because they've been, we talked to a season ticket holder on Friday who told us that, her and her group were getting there at like 8 a.m. to start drinking before the game. So, they've been drinking all day. They're out in the hot sun. Now they're either frustrated or they're elated, and it's terrible. And I had a guy who replied to the recap I wrote, said, hey, I sent this message to Ben and Woods, and I sent this message to Craig Elston, but can you and Darren dedicate some airtime about how to handle away fans at Snapdragon for SDFC games? No. Like, Darren and I are not the experts. I know bullshit about security at events, much less soccer events. But I imagine SDFC either has someone, employs someone, or knows someone that can probably do a better job with this going forward. But look, it's an inaugural season, right? Like, you learn some lessons by dealing with some bad things, and you hope that you can avoid it ever happening again. Period.
Yeah, and I also would say not to say that the San Diego fans that were involved here don't shoulder some of the blame, but we've seen this twice at Snapdragon Stadium, and both times it included teams from Los Angeles. So
yeah, I noticed that too.
I've seen this at a Padres Dodgers game. I've seen this at Chargers and Raiders games. And it's I don't know that LA fans bring out always the best in the San Diego fans. And,
Agreed.
I think that there was some provocation here. Now, let me say, my official position on what happened is aligned with the club. That, I do think what Mikey said afterwards is, we can't have this sort of stuff. We just can't have this sort of stuff. It is new, and you don't want this to be for people that are thinking about getting into it or unsure whether they want to get into it. You don't want to have this take away from, again, what I thought was my own personal opinion was just a really entertaining match on Saturday. Do I believe that there was some form of provocation from LA fans? I do. And I have reasons for saying that I will keep to myself, because it sounds like I will be condoning the behavior of the San Diego fans if I explain this in any detail. Yeah. But I also think our fans need to not necessarily take the bait when that happens. And there was some provocation there, and it was very clear to me that LA fans came down here, and it wasn't just like we're going to be loud and we're going to be drunk and all that sort of stuff. There was some stuff going on there that was antagonistic, and our people went for it. And I'd be a total hypocrite if I also would sit here and say, if I were to just sit here and try to scold everybody when, frankly, I've been in fights for way less reasons than some of what it was that was going on Saturday. But it's a bad look. And I have the benefit of age and a little bit of wisdom and maturity now that I'm not going to go storming up into an upper deck and get into a fist fight. Maybe 5 years ago. No. But, there was a time in my life where I probably would have done that sort of stuff. And
Yeah.
and I do have the benefit now of being a little bit older and a little bit more mature. And, I will tell you, it takes away from how good that game was and how much it should have been celebrated, especially on a short week where you got to get set for Seattle. Or maybe that's a good thing. Maybe being able to change the subject here with an away game at Seattle and a hostile place to play and a difficult place to play. Maybe that's well timed. As far as security, I'm not an expert on this either, but I will say I just went to a Champions League match in Europe and, they had a bunch of riot police in helmets and with batons and shields that literally would stand guard against the away section for Real Madrid and Inter Milan. And, maybe for some of these games, that's what it is. There's a reason why you want to keep away fans separated so you can avoid this sort of stuff. And it looked to me like there was plenty of security around the away section, around the LA Galaxy fans. I also would tell you that this fight happened right across the field from me during the postgame show. I didn't even notice it. I don't know what I was doing. I was so dialed in on the postgame show, I guess I just didn't even pick my head up to look across the field. But I saw the video and images on social media, and then I heard the helicopter circling overhead. So, I sort of sensed, okay, things didn't go so great here. It was this confluence of events, but, maybe what you have to do, we didn't have any problems against St. Louis. I don't think we had any problems against, Colorado. I don't think we have these kind of problems against anybody else. So, and it's unfortunate that it's happened here. The LAFC stuff, to me, like from what I saw, was a couple of SDFC fans kind of getting attacked by a whole army full of LAFC fans. So, it has happened before. It's happened in other sports. Unfortunately, it's happened here. And it's just such a short history. You don't want this to become the tone setter for the club and for the clubs and the fans. But, I think there was a little more to it than some of the social media images that people have seen. And, I don't want to keep talking about this sort of stuff. Not because, we shouldn't talk about it, because I don't want it to happen anymore. Like, we can't have this be some of the defining. We're getting too good a performance from the team with too many good players for this to be, the defining images that people associate with San Diego Football Club. And, you just have got to learn to not take the bait if they're going to bait you into something there. I know it's easier said than done. And like I said, I'd be a total hypocrite for saying that you should never do it because I've done it, but you shouldn't.
Two things. One, I heard that during the game there was security around the away section, and that the moment the game ended, security was essentially off the clock, so they all left.
I don't think so. I think when you look at some of the other images, you can actually see Galaxy fans running past security. And I don't know what you're supposed to do about hundreds of fans that are running past security. Because at first I thought the same thing. I thought where that violence was, where the fighting was at that one entrance that was closest to the away section. But somebody had a camera angle that was different that showed that was 2 or 3 sections over. And at least from what I saw, a lot of the yellow security vests were clear as day from the top of the section to the bottom of the section. But, these security guards are not riot police.
This is what I was going to say. Like, my brother worked for elite security at Qualcomm Stadium when he was like 18 years old. My brother is a string bean and doesn't know how to fight. And he has no background, no training, no nothing. And he got hired and paid a minimum wage to stand there on the field and I guess tackle someone if someone jumps on the field. But these are minimum wage employees who don't have a lot of security skills. So they're not the best of security. But the other side of this, and you might have some insight into this and you might not, is like LA Galaxy has to be like a little bit involved in this, like a little bit, because if it's the Galaxy fans that are being sent down and like you had an estimation of like, there's going to be like 600 Galaxy fans there, I'm assuming the team is involved in some way, shape, or form in getting those tickets to the fans or the supporters clubs or something. Like they have an idea of who's going down. That is supposed to work as some sort of like stopgap of like, if you don't behave well in their stadium, we'll screw you over in ours or something like that. And so there just needs to be a little bit more communication, I think, between the teams as far as who's coming down and who's allowed to come down again in the future.
Yeah, we remember, right? Jim Steig is a guy that you and I know very well. When he was the COO of the Chargers, things were managed a little bit differently when it was the Raiders in San Diego.
Yeah.
So, Jim specifically did that sort of stuff because he didn't want the kind of scenes that we would see oftentimes during Raider games. Now, it's NFL, so it's always hyper aggressive, and then, there's always fights. And I just saw a video this morning when I logged on to whichever one of these shit social media sites it was of, fans fighting at Angel Stadium, I think, and some dude gets carried out and he's all bloody and all that sort of stuff. So, I don't, I think what makes it feel a little bit different, A, it's new. B, we have these things called supporters groups. So it feels like it's very organized, right? Like it's like a gang warfare, right? And, let's also be honest that, a lot of the people that you see there are Mexican and darker skin. And, I saw quite a bit of commentary and some of the replies to some of the social media posts about ICE, and like that kind of thing. So that always becomes a factor in people's evaluation online, anonymous and cowardly evaluation of such things online. So, that always becomes a little bit of a part of this as well. So, it does feel a little bit different than some random, fight. And the idea that you kind of keep everybody separate, like I said, I don't know, maybe understanding that this isn't European soccer. But I remember when Lee and I were at the Barcelona match against Inter Milan, like we're like, yo, they're like real riot police there. And what they tell people at the end of the match, if you are an Inter Milan fan, you don't get to leave. You stay. You stay until everybody else is cleared out of the stadium. That's what you sign up for. When we went to Manchester United and Sevilla, same thing. Manchester United fans, you're not allowed to leave. You have to wait till everybody else clears the stadium. That's how we're going to avoid trouble here inside of this environment. Now, I don't know. I don't think we're there as a soccer country, but maybe for select matches, you have to adjust accordingly. So, like I said, I hate that this became so much the talking point afterwards. For 31,000 people were there, and a couple of dozen people ended up in this kind of situation, and it does take away from how good of a match it was and how good SDFC was playing, and that's the part about it that I hate the most. I do, and I really do hate that part of it the most.
It was a real bummer this morning to search for San Diego FC on like Google News to see what kind of articles I could find for Front Row Seat. 95% of them are, fight breaks out, brawl at Snapdragon.
And people get it wrong. I mean, people have it wrong. I saw a social media post where it's like, oh, imagine going to an SDFC game and their fans attack you and kick you while you're on the ground.
Jesus.
Except the actual video was of an SDFC fan on the ground being kicked by a Galaxy fan.
Jesus.
So again, I'm not trying to say one side is more to blame than the other. But Galaxy fans, they definitely had a plan of antagonism, and there's no doubt about that. And some of this goes back to the inaugural game, the first game ever. There were no problems there, but some stuff carried over from that first game into this one. And again, I'm not condoning it or excusing it, or if Mike Schilt would say, I'm not alibying it. But there was more than just, hey, everybody got all liquored up and decided to start brawling with one another and swinging their belts at one another. Sometimes it is a little fuck around and find out, and that's not me. Again, saying that like it's not the Chris Rock thing. I'm not saying he should have killed her, but I understand. But if a team is going to come down and try to antagonize you, and then something happens, I could say, hey guys, listen, it takes away from what was an amazing day and what's been an amazing start to the season here. But you can't, you just can't. There just was a time in my life where I probably would have. I'm glad I'm not there anymore. And hopefully this is the last time that we have to talk about this. We're done with Galaxy. The next time we see LAFC, we'll be at LAFC. So, hopefully there's nothing too concerning or too alarming, but that's weeks and weeks away. It's a busy week. It's at Seattle, so we can spend a little more time talking about that tomorrow. But again, I hate that it takes away from that moment. I don't think it does, actually. I mean, I think way more people are still thinking about Chucky than they are thinking about, a couple of dozen people in the upper deck. But I might be wrong.
I mean, that guy who sent me the email, like...
I don't think anybody left that stadium like, oh, man. Like, everybody noticed that the helicopter was threatening to spray chemical agents on everybody. I was like, what are we doing here?
No, the guy
But everybody left the stadium in a really, really good mood. Like I said, I was in the stadium. I didn't even notice that this was happening somehow. So, I tend to think most people's experience was really, really good. And, we just can't. We got to be better. We just got to
Yeah,
be better.
it's a marketing thing because you do it enough times, you get a reputation. You get a reputation, then families don't want to go because they don't feel like it's a safe place for them.
Was
and
drinking on the beach really that bad of a thing, or was it a couple of incidents where people acted like assholes, and now nobody can have a beer on the beach anymore? So it's usually you just have to. And I think the club did the right thing. I think Mikey. I hate that Mikey has to get up there and talk about it, but. I think Mikey's sincere. I don't think they're just saying this sort of stuff. I think that they really believe that sort of thing. And that's why I say I'm aligned with them, but there is a little bit of context. They don't have the benefit of context. Mikey came up there and be like, "Oh, well, let me tell you what happened." Mikey's got to be like, "No, full, black and white, can't happen."
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be, but I do think that there's a little bit of context there. Like, come on, guys, they set a trap, and it happened, and I saw what everybody else saw. I mean, there was a time where I was watching that video. I'm like, oh man, somebody's going to go over that railing.
That's the thing.
That's the other part that you can't have. You can't just be like, okay, bunch of knuckleheads, no real harm, no foul here. You got to say, the next time somebody might go over that railing. So, we've got to make sure that
over
this
a
sort of stuff doesn't happen again.
Over a game that you didn't even play, over a game that you paid money to sit and watch. Like, it's just a game. I know we do like shows about it every day, but like sports is still, it's a game. It's entertainment. It's not a thing that you need to get into a fight about, because if you get into a fight, especially in that position where all it takes is someone pushing you in the wrong direction at the wrong time and you're dead, like, understand sometimes that not everything is as serious as it needs to be.
Right. I mean, that's every corner. That's a corner in the gas lamp, Like, unfortunately, it's just it's a little bit of our society. I know it's the game, but it's like you said, I do feel like these LA fans sometimes don't always bring out the best in us, but it's not new, and it's probably not the last. We haven't even seen the Dodgers here yet, so still to come. Stay tuned, sports fans. All right, I'm off to training. John, you stay on the road to recovery, and we'll do it again tomorrow.